So I was actually sitting here thinking of doing a video on Led Zeppelin 4. I've been thinking about Led Zeppelin 4 lately and just how massive an album it is and how it's like one of the greatest fourth albums from any band and, sales and enduring songs and all that sort of thing. And then I started to think, it's like, well, there were a few other albums from the 70s that probably have been spoken about on a massive level like Led Zeppelin 4. And the more I started kind of looking into it, I figured, you know what, maybe it'd be interesting to talk about 6 of those massive rock albums from the 70s that made such an impact that have stood the test of time that people still talk about today. Kind of look at them, compare them, and try to figure out, well, which one kind of maybe reigns supreme? Which one, which of these maybe over time have maybe fallen slightly out of favor, or maybe they haven't. Maybe the legend of these albums has gotten greater over time, right? And I'm Pete Pardo from Sea Tranquility. Thanks for watching here today as I muse a little bit about stuff off the top of my head, right? Things I'm thinking about from a musical perspective. So the 6 albums I have chosen, of course, from 1971, Led Zeppelin 4. From 1973, Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon. From 1976, Boston's self-titled debut. Also from 1976, The Eagles' Hotel California. And from 1977, Fleetwood Mac Rumours. And Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. And yes, I do know that Pink Floyd's The Wall ranks up there as well. I also know that the Eagles had a greatest hits set, their first greatest hits album, which also was a massive, massive seller. But I didn't want to do 2 albums by any of the same bands. I figured just one from each. These 6. This is like the major leagues here. This is not the minor leagues. This is not the, the part-time stuff. This is not the would have been, could have been. These are the legends. These are the heavyweights. These are the champions here of rock and roll at this time period. And just like looking at like sales numbers specifically, I mean, I think to date, what do we got here? So the Led Zeppelin album has sold in excess of 37 million copies worldwide. Pink Floyd, 50 million. I think Pink Floyd is the champion out of all of these as far as pure sales go. We've got Boston, 25 million. We've got the Eagles, Hotel California, 42 million. Fleetwood Mac, 40 million. And the Meatloaf album, 43 million. So you add all that up, that's a lot of millions, right? That's well in excess of 100 million probably. What are we looking at? Math was never my strong point, but we're looking at probably like it's over 200 million copies of these 6 rock albums, these classics. So have they stood the test of time today? I think they have. We always talk about here on the channel, if you are of a certain vintage, I mean, if you're in a certain age group, and if you have been collecting, listening, enjoying stuff like this from this era since the days when these albums were released. If you are a regular listener of radio, there's always this sense of, I've heard that album way too many times. I don't love it as much as I used to because I'm kind of tired of the songs. I would, and I've heard that about all of these albums from from many people over the years, but to a lot of people, these will always be the classics. And I always kind of say, like with some of these albums that you know so well that you've had for 50 years, 40 years, and you've listened to hundreds and hundreds of times, like you don't even really need to play them much anymore because at any time you can dial up in your jukebox in your brain up here in your noggin and say, all right, so brain, play Bat Out of Hell, this track, that track, the other, and you know it, right? You can just hum along to it. You're not even really listening to it. It's playing in your brain. You know it so well. And it's like maybe you don't need to go and reach for that CD or, dial it up on a streaming service or whatever because you're like, I know it. So I know it. I'd rather listen to something else that I don't know as well, right? Or maybe you do like to listen to these albums over and over and over again, right? It's because I think we've all done it over the course of our lives. But going kind of back to the individual albums. So I think like Led Zeppelin 4, like, and I have, I got to speak for me personally because I can't tell all of your stories who are watching. I think me personally, this album has always remained pretty fresh for me, even though I don't listen to it all that often. And I find that I play the deep cuts more than some of the bigger hits to an extent. Like, Stairway to Heaven, I still think is a great song. I don't need to hear it more than once or twice a year, The one song on here I've really gotten tired of that I really can't even listen to anymore is Rock and Roll. They've just, Rock and Roll has been on so many like TV commercials, and I was never an enormous fan of it anyway. But man, Black Dog, I can listen to anytime. When the Levee Breaks, anytime. I think the Battle of Evermore is fantastic. I was never into that when I was a kid because I didn't really like the more acoustic folky stuff. Going to California, never really much of a fan of that song. Four Sticks, really like that a lot. I think there's greatness on here for sure, and I think it's a legendary album for a reason. I tend to favor, if I'm going to go pull a Zeppelin album nowadays, I will pull out, obviously Physical Graffiti. I listened to a lot of Houses of the Holy in recent years, but I still like the energy of this. I still like the craftsmanship of this. It's a very artful album, and again, it's got all the little elements we love so much from Led Zeppelin on here. So it's deserving of everything that it's gotten over the years. Here's another one that I don't play all that often, Dark Side of the Moon. It's not my favorite Zeppelin album. In fact, with the exception of, the Boston album is my favorite Boston record. This is not my favorite Pink Floyd album. I much prefer Animals and Wish You Were Here. But I totally recognize what a masterwork this is. From a production perspective, there's great tracks on here. And then this is one of those albums, I don't like to take stuff out of this. I want to hear that song. I want to hear that song. When I'm in the mood for Dark Side of the Moon, this is an album you have to experience start to finish. Mandatory. There's no other way to listen to this album, in my opinion. I know there were a few singles from this album, but I just want to hear the whole thing. Because I think that's the way it was meant to be played. That was why it was recorded. And I think all the little cool tricks that they got in the studio that they layered throughout the album lends itself to that listening experience. Play it from the start all the way to the end. But it's a great album. It's, to a lot of people, this is kind of, who don't listen to progressive rock. They're like, oh, but I like Pink Floyd. I like Dark Side of the Moon. A lot of longtime proggers are like, it's not really prog rock. I think it is, to an extent, right? It's certainly kind of crafty. It's certainly got lots of pop and psychedelic elements and whatnot. It's an art rock album. It's very artful, very sophisticated, very majestic, right? It's Dark Side of the Moon. Now, this album, I bought this when it came out because couldn't resist that album cover. And everybody was kind of talking about it at the time. And to me, this is an album chock full of anthems, one after another. I absolutely adore the production. I think the guitar tone or tones on this album are, for the time, pretty groundbreaking. I don't think until, we got to Van Halen's debut right around the corner from this that we really got another album in that decade that fully blew our socks off with how the guitars were produced. Just totally larger than life. I think Tom Scholz was a genius with coming up with this really kind of crunchy hard rock sound that just was sparkling with energy but yet clean sounding at the same time. There's no mud on this album whatsoever, and the vocals produced spectacularly. I mean, every instrument just so crystal clear in the mix, and just one incredible hard rock anthem after another. More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind, my personal favorite, which is just amazing. The guitar work is so good. Foreplay, Long Timer, you get that little proggy opening leading into Long Time, some amazing guitar solos. And you got these great supercharged boogie tracks like Rock and Roll Band and Smokin'. You got the more melodic stuff like Hitch a Ride, Let Me Take You Home Tonight, and then of course the crunchy, amazing Something About You. So good. Yeah. So Hotel California, another one, kind of like with the Zeppelin thing. I think it's one of their great albums. I don't think it's their best album, I shouldn't say best. It's not my personal favorite. I like One of These Nights a little bit more, But I think there's some amazing stuff on here, and what's really cool about this band is that, with a new reconfigured lineup and bringing like a rocker guy named Joe Walsh into the band, I think really did a lot for them. All of a sudden now, you had these two amazing lead guitar players, Don Felder and Joe Walsh, in the band, and they crafted some really, really interesting songs here that, again, kind of, what is it? Is it like California country rock? Is it hard rock? Is it pop? It's like it's a little bit of everything. Like it's a little bit of country in here, right? Title track, of course, is legendary, absolutely legendary. Kind of like Hotel California, one of those great, like, kind of longer pieces that we've heard a million times in our lives, but they're just so masterfully well done. Kind of like Freebird as well, that you only need to hear once, twice a year, but when you hear them, you're kind of like, oh yeah, now I realize and remember why that album is so great, or why that song is so great, right? But, you got the pop on here, like New Kid in Town. You got the wonderful Wasted Time. You got some rockers on here, like Life in the Fast Lane and Victim of Love. The Last Resort is amazing. That's kind of like the Eagles doing their own version of prog rock. So good. And the melodies and the way the vocals are layered. Don Henley, one of his best, man. Just, great stuff on here. And then there's the whole mystical, mysterious aspect of this album that has been talked about for ages, and the lyrics to the title track, and the photograph on the back, and who's that dude up in the corner on the balcony, like all that stuff. Just it's a magical album for a reason. And then the final two, so we're going to 1977. So Fleetwood Mac, Rumours. Is it the greatest Fleetwood Mac album? If you like this for this era, for this version of the band, of course. I think the self-titled album that came out right before it is nearly as good. In fact, I often listen to that a little bit more because obviously it doesn't have the overplayed factor. But this album I can put on at any time and I still enjoy hearing it because these songs have stood the test of time and they're so good. And again, this was just a refreshing reboot for the band after what I feel is a criminally underrated and overlooked version of the band, the Bob Welch era. I think there's some really, really fine stuff on those Bob Welch albums, and there's a whole bunch of them that they released in just a couple short years. If you've slept on the Bob Welch era because maybe you listened to the early blues stuff with Peter Green, there's great stuff there too, obviously, and then maybe you kind of fell out from the band, or maybe you jump back in with this, or maybe you never listened to the Peter Green blues era, never listened to the Bob Welch era, but jumped on board with this album or the self-titled album and were a fan going forward. Don't miss the Bob Welch albums because I think they have a lot of qualities. The Lindsay and Stevie era of the band, the Rumours era of the band, right? But back to this one, amazing. There's no weak tracks on here at all. Whether you're a fan of Goldust Woman or, the big hits like Dreams and Don't Stop and Go Your Own Way. Go Your Own Way for me is a perfect song. It's just so good. I love the stuff like Songbird. The Chain is just terrific. Secondhand News is fun. Never Going Back Again. Oh Daddy is just gorgeous. Christine McVie is the secret weapon on this album. As much as the two new folks brought, what they brought to the table is so good. Everything that Christine does is just so good. And then I love the fact that, with CD reissues, you get Silver Springs thrown on because I think Silver Springs is magical. But yeah, great album. Wonderfully produced. And it's just this kind of rock hybrid that's got little bits of folky things and pop and just everything all thrown in. Wonderful vocals. You got the three singers and just the great rhythms. And yeah, it's an amazing album. Another pretty much perfect album. Generally my favorite Fleetwood Mac album. If it's not number one, it's number two. And then last but not least, Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. I think maybe out of all of these, I think this is maybe the one that has fallen a little out of favor with some people because it's a product of its time, and I think to some, the music of Meatloaf maybe is looked at as kind of these days, maybe it was a little cheesy, right? Maybe it was a little overblown and a little bit too bombastic and whatnot. But I think like Meatloaf's and Jim Steinman, should mention him as well, the co-creators of these Bad at Hell albums. I think they were looking a little bit deeper than just your normal rock and roll. They were looking to bring kind of Broadway play bombast to the rock and roll stage, and I think they did an amazing job here with this. And I listened to this album a ton back in the day, to the point where I knew like every lyric, every vocal passage. I just musically, I just knew when everything was going to happen, because it's one of my favorite Todd Rundgren album productions, and one of my favorite albums featuring his guitar work, which is smoking on this. But I mean, the whole band is great. But you get the rockers on here, you get the ballady type stuff, you get the big kind of like theatrical stuff. Like Bad Out of Hell is all these long songs, right? Bad Out of Hell is an amazing hard rock. You got the Took Your Words Right Out of My Mouth, so catchy. Hot Summer Night, yeah, it's just so good. Heaven Can Wait, slower piano ballad, right? All revved up and no place to go. Old school rock and roll, really good. 2 Out of 3 Ain't Bad is a gorgeous ballad. Great vocals on here. You got Paradise by the Dashboard Light, which I used to think was a blast back in the day. This big, long, rambling epic, right? It just never seems to end. It's one of those songs I really don't need to hear anymore. I think I've lived through it enough in my life that now I'm kind of like, when I hear that, I'm like, yeah, I can change the station or whatever. And For Crying Out Loud is so like just powerful. Man, just like Meatloaf, just bring it from a vocal perspective. So yeah, I still enjoy it. I don't listen to it as much as I used to, but I know I've talked to a lot of people like, yeah, I used to love that album back in the day. Man, it's kind of cheesy now. Well, it's still a really great album, I think. So yeah, that's my little look at these 6 landmark 70s albums, some of the biggest selling albums of the 70s from a rock and roll perspective. Let us know what you think of these albums all these years later. And I'm curious, I know we do have some young folks who watch the channel. For you younger people who maybe have only discovered these albums like in the last 5 or 10 years or so, God, how cool is that to discover these things for the first time in more recent years? Let us know what you think of these down in the comments below. As far as my pick for my favorite out of all of these, I'm going to go with the Boston album as my favorite of all these. But, the Zeppelin and the Fleetwood Mac are up there as well. They're up there, but they're all great. They've been a part of my life for a long time, and I'm pretty happy, all the happier for it. So, anyway, that's my latest episode here. Thanks for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together, all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also down below we got the links to our Ko-Fi page, our channel donations, our merch page, our Cameo page, and the Sea of Tranquility membership options. All down below. Thanks in advance to everybody who does support the channel. It's greatly appreciated, and we'll see you soon here with more stuff. I am Pardo. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.